In March of 2000, 23-year-old Leah Roberts left her home in North Carolina without telling anyone where she was going. She packed up her Jeep, left a note filled with cryptic reflections on life, and vanished into the unknown. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the mysterious case of Leah Roberts' disappearance. Born on the 23rd of July 1976, Leah Toby Roberts was raised in North Carolina. Her late teens were rocky, to say the least. Her father was diagnosed with a chronic lung condition when she was just 17, and not long afterwards her mother passed from heart disease. But even with this series of tragedies, her fortune would go from bad to worse after she was involved in a serious car crash. Thankfully, she did survive, but with a punctured lung and shattered femur. As part of her recovery, she needed to undergo surgery to get a metal rod implanted into her leg. This terrifying crash left a lasting impression on poor Leah, who defined the traumas experienced in the crash as making her feel like she was born again. Early next year, in 1999, her father would also pass away. For poor Leah, this was just more devastation, which she was becoming used to, and the tragic news came just a few weeks before she was planning on going to Costa Rica for a field program. Understandably, she decided to go on the trip to try to take her mind off the loss. Now, as I'm sure you would all expect, suffering from this much trauma and devastation in such a condensed period of time is enough to make even the most resilient, stoic person have some serious mental issues. From various accounts of people close to Leah, it appears that she was no exception, and these traumas stacked up, having a serious impact on her. Her sister, Cara, said that since Leah had lost both parents by just age 22 and had already faced a near-death experience, she was seemingly quite lost and struggling with her direction and purpose in life. Despite her siblings advising her against it, she decided to drop out of NCSU right before graduating to focus on things she was more genuinely interested in and experience more of the world. She started playing guitar, became interested in photography, she wrote poems, adopted a kitten, and more. Sounds like she decided to live her best life, to be honest. It was around this time that she became fascinated with Beat Generation author Jack Kerouac. The Beat Generation was a literary movement which gained traction post-World War II and was essentially a counterculture nonconformist movement. Much of their writing would focus on politics and culture after the war. She discussed with her friends the possibility of taking inspiration from Jack and going on a road trip. One of his books features a narrative set on Desolation Peak in Washington, which particularly interested her and was seemingly a big part of the reason she decided to embark on a large road trip herself, or as her sister described it, a soul-searching trip. Now, something worth noting is the discussions surrounding her mental state on the lead up to this trip. Some friends described her as being personable and happy, whilst others said she was private and introspective. Obviously, without being there, it's hard to say, but I would expect she was definitely living under the life is short mantra, a completely understandable perspective given her circumstances. On March the 9th, 2000, Leah Roberts embarked on her road trip. She left Durham, North Carolina in her white 1993 Jeep Cherokee and headed west, after packing her things and withdrawing $3,000 in cash. She took her adopted kitten, B, and some of her important possessions. She didn't provide much in the way of specifics to her roommate or siblings, only leaving behind a brief note and some money before disappearing. Interestingly, she missed a babysitting job which had been organised prior to her leaving, which she was meant to do on March the 10th. Whilst it's entirely possible that she simply forgot about her agreed work in the excitement of leaving, her abrupt departure confused her friends and family. Her sister Cara had power of attorney over Leah's bank accounts after their parents deceased. Confused as to her whereabouts, Cara tried tracking her movements through the bank transactions. She was able to see that Leah had withdrawn a few grand on the afternoon of the 9th. The other transactions that Cara saw were to pay for a motel room, petrol, and food. By following them in order, Cara was able to determine that Leah was headed west along Interstate 40 before cutting up north on Interstate 5 after getting to California. Within about 3 days of her departure, she had reached Oregon, which is a pretty impressive feat. Based on the direction her journey was roughly plotted as, This is nearly 3,000 miles of driving, or about 50 hours. That is a ton of driving to do over a period of only around 3.5 days. Covering so much distance in such a rapid time frame could suggest either that she was just in an impulsive rush to get to her destination, or possibly even that she was in a manic state. Most people would much prefer to space out a journey like this over at least an additional day or two, because sitting in a car for that long all day is practically agonizing after a while, even in something big and boaty like Leah's Jeep Cherokee. Another transaction followed on the morning of March 13th, 2000, 4 days after Leah left. She had paid for some petrol in Brooks, Oregon. This transaction was later confirmed to definitely be Leah, since there was security camera footage from the day. The recording showed that Leah was alone and seemed to be doing fine. There were no visible signs of anything bad having happened or any signs of panic. The only thing that did catch investigators' attention was that she kept looking out into the car park. Whilst this could definitely be completely innocent, possibly even a matter of boredom or daydreaming, some investigators did speculate that something more sinister could also be the culprit. Perhaps she thought she was being followed or was waiting around for someone. Later that day, the 13th of March, Leah was in Bellingham, Washington, a further 300 miles and 5 hours north of Brooks, Oregon. A ticket to see the film American Beauty had been bought at the Bellis Fair Mall. The Bellis Fair Mall would prove to be significant in this story, since this was the location of Leah's last reported sightings. After the film had ended, she was apparently spotted at the Elephant and Castle restaurant in the mall. 2 men who were also at the restaurant at the time told the police they had talked to her. This was pretty much concretely confirmed to be a legitimate sighting, since one recalled her talking about the author Jack Kerouac, very specific, and why she was in Washington. At this point, however, the 2 men's stories deviated. Whilst one of the 2 men said that she left the restaurant alone, the other said that Leah left with a man who he apparently heard her call Barry. This proved to be a point of contention in the investigation. Should Barry be real? This could possibly suggest foul play was involved in her shocking disappearance. The following day, on March the 14th, Cara, Leah's sister, and Nicole, Leah's roommate, decided to search her room. It was then that they discovered the note Leah had left, as well as some of the cash she had withdrawn to cover her portion of the bills. This was of course also when they realised she had taken B, her kitten, and lots of clothes. Although it's not known exactly what day, Cara is thought to have reported Leah as missing around this time, either on the 13th or the 14th. So, to sum up what we know so far, Leah has taken out a load of money, leaves Durham, North Carolina, and takes her kitten. Over the next couple of days, she heads west, pays for a hotel in Memphis, as well as some petrol and food. Then, on the 13th, she pays for a ticket to see American Beauty at the cinema and was spotted at the Elephant and Castle restaurant in the same mall. Depending on which statement you believe, she was either alone or possibly with a man called Barry. Cara, her sister, then reports her missing. And that brings us to the end of March the 14th. With the missing person report put out, as well as an understanding of Leah's possible vague whereabouts, the searching commenced. March the 18th. A couple who were jogging around Canyon Creek Road, which is a side road off of the Mount Baker Highway in Washington, made an alarming discovery. They noticed some clothes on the side of the road. Some of them had been tied to trees and branches. This is what alarmed them and caused them to report it. Whilst it's not uncommon to occasionally find some clothing dumped or fly-tipped, possibly even just lost by accident, the fact that some of it was tied up around branches suggested that this was clearly something deliberate. After taking a more thorough look around the area for anything else, the joggers stumbled across Leah's white Jeep Cherokee, spotting it at the bottom of a steep embankment, wrecked and in the woodlands near the North Cascades National Park. Of course, after the joggers reported what they'd seen, the car was quickly traced back to Leah Roberts. The unusual elements of this scene don't just end at the tied up clothing though. Leah was nowhere to be found anywhere near the car. Both inside and surrounding the Jeep, a confusing array of Leah's belongings were found. There was her passport, there was a checkbook, her driver's license, more clothing, and her guitar. CDs also littered the scene in and out. Not only that, but around $2,500 in cash was also found, which had been stuffed into her various trouser pockets. But the possession which really raised some alarm bells was when they found her mother's diamond engagement ring. This ring, passed down to her, was her most prized possession, and she would always wear it. Friends and family said this is certainly not something Leah would willingly part with, and Nicole, her roommate, reportedly saw this discovery as a bad sign. Should foul play have possibly been involved in whatever caused this strange scene, robbery was of course struck off the cards. What kind of robber would leave a diamond ring and thousands of dollars in cash behind? It simply doesn't make sense. Should foul play not have been involved, it's equally possible that in a Jack Kerouac-inspired manic episode, she decided to abandon all of her belongings as some kind of rejection of materialism. But the fact that she withdrew $3,000 just a few days earlier makes this hard to believe. It would also have to have been a rather impulsive moment of madness, in my opinion, if Leah intentionally decided to crash the car and leave everything there. And also doesn't explain why some of her clothes were tied around branches. In terms of less valuable but still noteworthy possessions found at the scene, some cat food and an empty cat carrier were there, which confirmed that her cat was with her at the time. Just like Leah, her kitten Bee's fate is still unknown, making it possible that she and her kitten met a similar fate. Importantly, the Jeep was in a really dire state, and it was clear that the car hadn't merely been pushed off the road by Leah or a wrongdoer. Investigators from the Washington State Patrol estimated that it must have been going at around 40 miles an hour before sharply veering off the road, crashing down the steep embankment and rolling over multiple times. Now, anyone at the wheel of a 2-ton Jeep getting smashed to pieces as it rolls down an embankment would more than likely suffer from some serious, possibly even life-threatening injuries. But despite the severity of the crash, investigators didn't find any traces of blood or hair or any evidence for that matter that an occupant of the vehicle had sustained an injury. As well as the lack of biological evidence, the investigators didn't see any sign of seatbelt stretch, which would indicate someone was sat in the driver's seat during the crash. Now, based on the severity and magnitude of the crash, this led investigators to strongly consider the possibility that the crash scene had been intentionally staged. Strangely though, there were also no signs of any marks to suggest the Jeep had been pushed into the embankment. With so many confusing elements and loose ends, it's easy to see how the wreckage of Leah Roberts' Jeep, paired with her baffling disappearance, has captivated so many, even decades after it happened. So with no signs of being pushed, but equally no signs of anyone being in the Jeep when it crashed, one remaining possibility is the Mission Impossible style stunt of jumping out of the speeding car. But this would surely have led to some serious injuries, for which there would be some evidence of on the nearby road. To further add to the confusion, blankets and pillows were seemingly arranged in the shattered windows, as if it were used as a shelter. One possibility which has been discussed in the past is the theory that Leah, or someone else, could have staged the crash before opting to sleep in the wreckage overnight for shelter before moving on. As we discussed earlier, the discovery of the Jeep by the two joggers caused local police to come out and take a look. Initially, given no additional context, they expected that the crash was probably a simple drunk driving mishap, but as soon as they spotted the North Carolina plates and contacted the authorities there, it was found to be Leah's, at which point Cara Roberts, Leah's sister, was notified. They had Leah's car, but there was no sign of Leah. An extensive search proceeded where the surrounding area of the crash site was intensely covered with search and rescue teams, sniffer dogs, people armed with metal detectors since, Leah has a metal rod in her leg, and helicopter support. For weeks, they combed the area, but to no avail. They found practically no meaningful evidence whatsoever. After being notified of the discovery of the Jeep, Cara and Heath Roberts, both of Leah's siblings, headed over to Bellingham to try to help with the search for her. They primarily focused on distributing flyers to raise awareness and talk to local businesses. Now, since this curious case is relatively modern in the whole scheme of things, finding absolutely no meaningful evidence or leads surrounding a wreckage further reinforced the theory that Leah wasn't in the car when it crashed. Whether she staged the crash herself, or perhaps someone else did to confuse and waste the time of the authorities, was unclear. A few days after the Jeep was discovered, Whatcom County Sheriff's Office received a call. It's from an anonymous man. He claims that his wife saw a young woman matching Leah's description at a Texaco petrol station in Everett, Washington, which was around 70 miles south of Bellingham, the crash site. According to the caller, the woman appeared to be disoriented and confused and was unable to remember her name or even where she lived. The sheriff's office tried asking more questions, but seemingly in a panic, the caller hung up immediately afterwards. Although the caller was anonymous, which doesn't help when it comes to credibility, they decided the best thing to do would be to take the call seriously and give them the benefit of the doubt. How Leah could have ended up over 70 miles away from her wrecked Jeep and left the area without a trace was a truly baffling situation, albeit weirdly possible.